you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
And thank you, Dom. Welcome to Inside Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Watching on Rumble, go right ahead up there. Join the locals community. Join the data revolution, folks. peoplespundit.locals.com. If you're watching on YouTube, that's great. Give us a thumbs up. Go ahead and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we go live. But we would very much like you to move over to Rumble. All right, I'm going to make these pitches every day. And for those, again, who are on Rumble, join the locals community, become members, to see what it's like. Definitely become supporters. We have big plans for 2022 for the election. It's going to be worth it. So the bigger the community grows, the more I can bring you, the more exclusive stuff we can give you. I have big plans, folks, big plans. All right. People's Pundit. It's going solo, or I mean, of course, we're gonna have people on. We're gonna have people on, but we're gonna have something this year that is going to be. It will more than rival what we've done in the past. That is the plan, but we need your help to do it. So go ahead and sign up to locals. Again, peoplespundit.locals.com, right there, right on the screen, right there, and the link if you're watching on Rumble's right there. All right. It's Friday. It's merch day. Links are in the description. I hope all of you watching at home are wearing your merchandise. If you are, send a picture to Laura. We'd like to see it. All right. Accuracy Matters is now out because it does. And as we get closer and closer to this election season, that becomes ever more clear. All right. So we have this again widening. And I told you, forget the polls last year. Forget them. They will go back to being silly. Because it is the silly season. Midterm madness, we're going to call it over here. They will go back to doing what they do. Some people have tried to address critical methodological issues that they have. The vast majority, have not. They are playing the same games they have always played. They simply don't care. And we have universes that are not reconcilable. You cannot reconcile double-digit leads for one party with small single-digit leads almost within the sampling era for another. You simply cannot. One is right, one is wrong. If past is prologue, those of us who have been right will be right again, and those who have been wrong will be wrong again. Take it to the bank. Which brings me to this latest point. We talked about the Trafalgar poll, and I even said, maybe it's a little bit of a lead. Earlier this week, they had Republicans leading by 12 points at the 50, I believe it was 52-40. And Rasmussen today, their polls out. If you were on locals, you got it. Was still embargoed. I don't believe it's embargoed anymore. So let's go ahead and show it. Midterm Madness. You like my little graphic? Every time we do some polls, I'm going to pull up the Midterm Madness. All right. Boom. So here it is. Hope you guys can see it as much. Why is this important? Apples to apples, apples to apples. As I'm sure they will not fail to mention in their article, which I have not read if it's out already, that this is a historic generic ballot lead. It is the second time that Republicans have posted a 13-point, a historic generic ballot lead. In Rasmussen reports as generic ballot since they began tracking it going into 2020. Last week, they dipped down a little bit to, they dipped down to a 9-point lead. We dipped down to 6, 7, something was the last we had. You know what? I can show you right here. Here it is. We dipped down slightly. Republicans came down from 47, if I remember correctly, to 45. But Democrats also fell, and they're at 38. So we had generally a a 7-point lead. Rasmussen had a 9. Curious to know what we would have if we would move into the election season right now. But we're not there at this moment. So right now we have, and I will, by the way, I promise I will put that up very, very soon. The new generic ballot, and it's really not just a generic ballot, but the new polling form for the public polling project. So I think it's important that we start to add our voice periodically. I mean, we'll shoot for every month. That's the goal. It's, if it happens, it happens. But every couple of months would be just fine with me. Quarterly poll is where we started, and we that was the goal we started with, and we beat that goal. So we've been able, maybe every month to every 2 months to release a poll, and that's good. We're adding more voices to the conversation, and it's important that we do, because again, some of us have been right, the rest of them have been wrong. The vast majority of them have been wrong. You cannot reconcile Morning Consult +2 yesterday or Wednesday, which was an inching up from Republican +1. You can't reconcile that with Rasmussen, Republicans +13, Trafalgar, Republicans +12, Big Data, Republicans +7 to 9. It's not possible. Anyway, I'd like you to turn your attention real quick to females. In the Rasmussen polling, Republicans are leading among females 49 to 38. We also found both Trump and the generic Republicans leading, though by a lesser margin, among female voters. And we were a few points. Trump, I think, was like 4. Republicans were like 1 or 2. The last time that's happened in a midterm congressional election was 2010. Republicans had a much bigger lead, of course, among men, but they inched out women. They did. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just that the last time we saw a presidential candidate, Republican presidential candidate, do it was Ronald Reagan. Herbert Walker Bush, he cruised to his first election victory with over 400 electoral votes, failed to carry Wisconsin, but nevertheless barely lost women. He still nevertheless lost them. He won heavily among men, and that's what carried him to victory. Here we are seeing something very different happen. We are not the only ones. If Trafalgar has a 12-point lead, rest assured, I don't know because they don't put out crosstabs, but rest assured, Republicans are leading in Trafalgar's polling among women. There's no way to win men in this day and age. Well, I mean, it's possible, but it's just not likely. It's difficult to get that large of a lead on the backs of men. It's not 1984, ain't 1988 anymore. It's not. So at first, seeing these numbers, I was a bit skeptical. I got to be honest with you. But then when we were polling, I could clearly see that Republicans were carrying women. In the last, you know what? Can pull it up right now. In the last big data, or let's just call it the public polling project, Republicans led among women by 5 points. Donald Trump led Joe Biden among women. I think this was the one where it was actually a little bit smaller for Trump. No, I'm wrong. I was right the first time. Donald Trump leads Joe Biden 42-34 among women in our latest polling. He leads among men actually by a little bit smaller of a margin, which was odd to us, but not out of the realm of possibility. All right, so here we have this very simple trend that some of us are finding, and I strongly suspect, and they probably know, that their very metro-skewed panels are not reaching certain women, not just conservative women. When we look at our social desirability bias indicators, those suburban women are not necessarily conservative. They were the highest likelihood to tell us they were uncomfortable being honest with the interview, about their political beliefs, how they intend to vote during the interview. We also saw that before 2022. Didn't get any better, by the way. And there are other groups, black men. Somehow we missed black women. They also doubled their vote share for a Republican candidate, but presidential candidate. But somehow we did miss that. We saw black men, however, younger black men, working black men, who are younger, because the ties to the Democratic Party are not as strong as they are to, say, 45 and above. And definitely 54 and above. Definitely. And some of you have been watching a while. You may remember the presentation in Pennsylvania, how we showed you the regression by age. It was very clear. Jumped right out. But it doesn't mean they're 100% comfortable with telling us that, because they're not. All right. And by the way, that compares to states like Ohio, who told pollsters, I'm going to vote this way regardless, and I don't give a damn what you think. And yet still, polls like Quinnipiac and the New York Times had leads for Biden in states like Ohio and Iowa. So something is just fundamentally wrong there. Morning Consult, also in the Midwest, abysmal. Something was very wrong with how they conducted their polling. And yet, these are the people that will constantly put up these polls as we move into this election cycle that simply doesn't jive with reality. And by the way, I'm not exempting Fox from my criticism. Fox has been among the worst pollster, and I would strongly advise you to gear up for like a Democrat +2 or something on their generic ballot. They'll swing 8 points in the wrong direction for Glenn Youngkin, because they thought he was going to be a Mitt Romney-like Republican. They'll do that. Believe me. But they won't give the rest of them on the ballot a fair shake. It's not going to happen. All right, so while we're at it and while we're talking about bias, before I wrap this up, I'm showing you this because we're going to get into redistricting in not the second half, in the second 30-minute block. We're going to get into redistricting. And there's this talk about how much do Republicans really have to lead since they've been doing so poorly in redistricting. No, truth be told, they have some good news in Minnesota and North Carolina. Now, you will see Mark Elias and Dave Wasserman crying about it on Twitter, but it's ludicrous. There's just no objectivity in redistricting. And I want to get, especially in North Carolina, I want to get a little bit deeper into the weeds, because people aren't being told the whole story. They're just not. In Minnesota, Republicans actually did okay. They did all right, despite Democrats trying to use a single county in the Eastern Iron Range in northern Minnesota to drown out some of the more conservative northwest vote in Minnesota. The northwest of Minnesota is trending heavily Republican. The northeast is also trending Republican, but they're holding on in a single, really two counties. Cook got more towards Trump, but there's a single, I wouldn't call it urban, but definitely metro area that's still in one county in the middle of the Iron Range. And you could clearly see Democrats were trying to use that to dilute some of the vote out in the Northwest. But in order to do that, they had to hurt someone. And there was a death, by the way, in the Republican caucus, Hagedorn. And he was like 51 years old. There will be special election. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to, prelude this. I'll repeat it later. It doesn't matter. It's still an R+8 roughly district, and that is safe Republican. That's not going anywhere. Not this election cycle. Republican +1 or 2 on the Morning Consult generic ballot, be damned. Republicans will carry that special election easily. And what they did was put a certain Democratic congresswoman in jeopardy. So there's actually, for once, good news for Republicans in the redistricting war, where generally it has been bad news. But before I do that, I want to get into this. We talked about Durham this week, about the Durham report that came out on Friday through Fox News. Some other stuff Fox has put up there, you could clearly tell when you read that first interview, they were teeing up other things. There is a lot more to the story. There's a lot more to the story that is clear as day and detailed in the 1,000+ pages that Dan Ratcliffe handed over to special counsel John Durham, which nobody is reporting on, though I know personally many people in media know. They know the contents of these documents and what they mean for Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And yet they are continuing the nonsense. Even now, fact check organizations, it's different when people, it's different in the middle of the Russia collusion hoax when Donald Trump goes to Twitter and says, Obama spied on me and got caught. CNN goes, that's bogus, even though their own reporting a month later said just that. And the Daily Mail report said just that. It was one thing to believe the fake fact checkers 4 years ago, plus it's another thing for these fake fact checkers to continue this cover up now, this week. Here, let's go back though. Let's go back. Here we go. Here's what we affectionately refer to as fake-ass fact-checker PolitiFact. Here we have an article Donald Trump stated August 2020 in a tweet. Says Barack Obama spied on my campaign and got caught. False. False. Did they go back? Let's even give them the benefit of the doubt, which they don't deserve. Because I've experienced PolitiFact myself, and I'm telling you, there are a bunch of partisan hacks. And by the way, fairly stupid. They don't even really understand the topics that they're fact-checking. They don't have a full, in-depth grasp of the issues which they claim to be the arbiters of truth on. Believe me, whether it's what the hell is a change of address flag, or it's or it's something else related to Spygate, which we're going to go over right now. Because this guy clearly doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Or maybe or worse, maybe he does, but he's still such a hack, he just wants to do it anyway. I actually don't give him that kind of credit. I think he's a hack anyway, don't get me wrong, but he's stupid. And you can read it in the lines that he's stupid. Ignorant, I don't know, maybe I would use that word before. It's maybe a little bit too generous because it's not like you can't search what the term means. In today's day and age, it's not hard to find out what terminology really is, but they're lazy. So, it's a tough call. This is clearly a true tweet. We know it's true now. Giving them the benefit of the doubt back then was a stretch. Again, I'm going to say this to the people who still believe the Russia collusion hoax. At home. You were the only ones who ever really believed it. They're laughing at you, and they laugh hysterically behind your back. Aaron Mate, he's got the term blue anon that he uses. That's where you're at right now. You're really no different than QAnon. You're just blue anon. And nobody who is telling the lie believed or believes it. Even somebody like Natasha Bertrand, who is an asset, she doesn't have sources, she is their asset intel community. She just doesn't know the difference. Even she really doesn't believe it. She just puts up what they tell her to put up because she's a hack. But nobody, people at home, understand something. They didn't believe it. And the same goes for daytime television on Fox News. They entertained every fake Washington Post headline, every fake New York Times headline, every fake CNN headline, every fake Brian Ross headline, over and over and over. I mean, it was on a daily basis when everybody knew what Donald Trump said here was true. They just will protect Barack Obama at any and all costs. And they hate Donald Trump to death. And if you're one of his supporters, they hate your guts too. And to them, Understand something, because this, I'm putting this up for so long because it's the genesis of it all. And you have to understand something, how much they love Barack Obama, because they, look, can we just say, can we be honest? Not he was a great president. He wasn't. Barack Obama was fairly bad at his job. Was he good at advancing the progressive agenda? If that's the gauge, it's like, what makes a good president, right? If you're on the left and that's your gauge, then yeah, I guess he was a good president. That's how you determine whether or not someone was a good president or not. If you gauge it by the overall health and well-being of the country, he was a terrible president. If you gauge it based on the actual job, the role, the duties of a president, he was a horrible president. He didn't like to talk to Congress. He didn't like to sit for his briefings. He didn't like to listen to people in different agencies. He just hated it. He delegated authority to people like Valerie Jarrett and just generally didn't want to be bothered. I will give him this, at least. He wasn't an empty suit. So when Joe Biden was pushing him not to launch the raid against Osama bin Laden, he did it anyway. But there were times when he folded, like he did to Hillary Clinton on Libya. He knew damn well there was no real interest in Libya. Sidney Blumenthal and his friend's business interest was Hillary Clinton's interest in Libya. He knew it too. He hated Sidney Blumenthal, still does. But he knew that she wanted to make Libya her foreign policy crown jewel when she ran for president after his second term. So he kind of just let her do her thing at the expense to American trustworthiness abroad and American power and American lives, by the way. Because I know 4 employees at the State Department who would argue it probably wasn't worth it if they were alive. But they're not, so they can't. And bottom line here is they love him no matter how the rest of us who try to look at things objectively. What is the role of a president? If we're looking at Obama based on the role, he was a bad president. But they love him because he's their first black president. He represents something that they have been hoping for years, and you can get that, and that's all right. There really is nothing wrong with that. There's something wrong, however, with using that as a reason to not allow valid criticism or to even, cover up serious scandals and serious abuses of power. There's nothing wrong with having a goal. Hope society advances enough where it will elect a black president. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we all did. I think that's why his approval rating among Republicans was historically high. I think everybody wanted Barack Obama to succeed if he was going to be, a moderate president, but he was not. It's not the voters' fault that he turned out to be something he wasn't, which is why the intel community never gave him hell like they gave Donald Trump hell. And they love him. They would build a shrine to him tomorrow if he accomplished the things Donald Trump did. And they hate Donald Trump. So under no circumstances can these people live with themselves if it is Donald Trump who ends up taking down Barack Obama's image. So they won't tell you what I'm going to tell you right now. That tweet is 100% correct. John Brennan made Barack Obama aware of what Hillary Clinton was doing. His White House was absolutely complacent in it. And in the documents that John Ratcliffe gave the special counsel, there is Barack Obama all over them. In his own handwriting, he reveals that it was Joe Biden's idea. That then vice president, the now current president of the United States, it was his idea to feloniously use the Logan Act, which everyone knows is unconstitutional and has never been used successfully in the history of the country. 200 plus years on the books. It's never been used successfully because everybody on both sides has always believed it was unconstitutional. They know that. They know what the White House logs say. They know Jim Clapper is in an email to the president advising against it, saying, I don't think, Mr. President, this is a very good idea for you to do. He's all over this scandal. Hillary Clinton obviously is the key player, but there is no way on God's green earth all of these pieces would have been put in motion, and that president of the United States would not have known about it, and at the very least turned a blind eye. At the worst, held, say, in January, a few weeks before Donald Trump was inaugurated, a meeting in the Oval Office with all of the key players, including Joe Biden, and came up with the scheme on how they were going to take him out during the transition, or how they would plant the seeds that would take him out and through General Flynn during the transition. It's all there. And they know it's all there. So even if we were to give PolitiHack the benefit of the doubt, why isn't this down? Why isn't this revised? At least. You better move that meter over, you filthy hacks, because this is absolutely a true statement. You know it. I know it. Everyone knows it. And it didn't stop there. Here is how they attacked. The next one is them attacking conservative bloggers for publishing revelations that came down that little by little chipped away at any notion that Russia collusion was true, that it was real, and not only that, but it was clearly a disinformation campaign planted by Clinton and allowed to be conducted with Barack Obama's blessing. It clearly was. Here's another one. Obama bloggers did, in fact, unconstitutionally spy on Trump throughout the presidential election. Again, true. This wasn't constitutional. Even if they had a pretext to launch that investigation, which they did not. But let's be generous and say, even if they had a pretext to launch that investigation, they still lied to the FISA court to get the initial warrant, which kicked it all off. Once you get the initial one, just so you all know, there are degrees of separation. And it's not just Carter Page. You're trying to use what's called incidental collection so the name on the warrant is a peripheral person. But you're going to use incidental collection to sweep everybody you really are targeting up in that. And as long as it's 3 degrees of separation, no harm, no foul. So it's already pretty liberal and lax standards to begin with. And yet, that's not the real story. The real story is that they have to lie to the FISA court to do it. And of course it was done with Obama's blessing. So this, PolitiHack, this needs to be either amended or taken down because you're making false claims. You are the ones pushing false information. We knew it then, but we definitely know it now. So how are they responding now? Now that the cat's out of the bag, how are they responding to it now? Like this. And give me a second to drink a cup of coffee while you read that. All right, here it is. Durham's documents show that Hillary Clinton hired people who hacked into Trump's home and office computers and planted evidence, fabricated evidence connecting Trump to Russia. Let's break this down because what they're doing to PolitiFact with this is real cute. All right. They make the explicit statement that nowhere in the Durham report does it justify the statements he made, and they swoop it all up into a blank. They say that he's deeply misconstruing what the Durham report says, and that nowhere in the report does it mention hacking. All right. Let's take this little by little, step by step here, so we can better understand this. All right. The bottom line is, Bill, and it's Bill, what's his name? Bill McKinley. I forgot his name because I just don't care that much about him. Give me a second though, because I want to attribute it to the correct hack. He deserves it. All right, but this is what I'm saying. It's like part ignorance and part stupidity. But Bill McCarthy, yeah. I want to lean towards ignorance on this one because of the way he's talking about it in the rest of the fact check. I don't think he understands basic terminology, which you would need to understand in order to get what Durham is saying, in order to fully comprehend what Durham is alleging happened. And by the way, just like with the Mueller investigation, I very much hope to see actual evidence and not just the claims of a prosecutor. However, in the case of Durham, I actually do know the evidence. I just want him to release it, like John Ratcliffe had asked Donald Trump to do before he left office, and he refused to do. But I know what it is. Unlike the Mueller report, where they just kind of like made these outrageous claims, but never backed it up at all. And the very same tech company that Mueller relied on is being accused of committing criminal acts in this investigation. That is a big part of this puzzle people have to understand. Again, the very same tech company that the FBI and Robert Mueller relied on for their so-called analysis of what happened is the same tech company that Durham is alleging committed crimes. So here's his first statement. Let's just take the quotes. Durham's documents show that Hillary Clinton hired people who hacked into Trump's home and office computers. Bill is taking issue with the word hacked. He clearly doesn't know what the hell a DNS is. A DNS is a record that tells a browser where to point when they're looking for website information. All right? To make it very simple. And the bottom line is, the people who did this did not have permission to look at Trump's servers or to use the permission that they had as a legitimate government contractor. They abused their power. So they basically used they betrayed the trust of the government. They had contracts and they had access, but it wasn't for that. And instead, they used it to go and look at White House server content that they were not cleared to look at. That is a hack. Bill, you don't seem to understand what a DNS is or what it does, or the fact that it doesn't really matter if you didn't have permission to look at the content of those servers, whether it's privately at Trump's home, the Trump Tower office, his residence, whatever it may be, or the White House. He wasn't given permission to look at that information. That is a hack. The hell else would you call it? It's just a very easy hack. So the only issue I would take with this is that it says Durham's documents show. Well, I guess, but they really allege because it is a special counsel, right? So I'm saying technically here, until Durham technically puts forward the documents that I know he has, and I know do back up what he says, or at least the vast majority. Some things, kind of new, and I'd like to see what he had, to back that up. And he's looking at things, obviously, the rest of us aren't seeing, but I would like to see it. I am skeptical by nature. I'm adversarial by nature. It doesn't matter what party it hurts or helps. And I would like to see it. But that is, in and of itself, the only thing with that first set of quotes that really I take issue with. The concept of hacking is like they are redefining what hacking means. Is there a statute of limitation on treason? And how common are such DNS hacks? That's a great question, Orange Out. Honestly, that's a great question because I was told a story. There's always somebody who's always trying to get some coverage. And I was the editor of PPD. I was doing a story on Jim Comey and what he had already known. And a lawyer approached me, gave me a ton of evidence. who represented about 13 clients, who said that they were legitimate contractors with the federal government and that the FBI had been running basically a black op on these contractors who are private organizations because they had access to very similar, when you're looking at what Durham's talking about with DNS, very similar tactics were used to get into these private companies' websites to steal intellectual property from them. Why? What was the point of this? So basically, they no longer had to pay these contractors for that intellectual property. And then Comey and his cohorts at the FBI would take that information and give it to the appropriate person, whether it's an agency in the Defense Department, or whether it's the Pentagon or somewhere else, wherever it belonged, whoever had purview over the scope of that project, basically, they would get that. It was an incredible story. So I think like my answer to that, which is a really good question, is I don't think we know. My instinct is that it's pretty more prevalent. It's pretty more prevalent than anyone probably knows. But at this point, the people who are trying to ignore the Durham story are doing what they have always done, which is rely on something I like to call rational ignorance, which Viva and I talked about was it Wednesday? Wednesday. It's not that people are stupid, the general public's stupid. They're not at all. Believe me, as a public opinion guy, they're not. It's that they're freaking busy. And they don't have the time to become experts on all of the minutia of the policies and intricacies of a story that is, like those of us who are political junkies are looking at constantly. They don't have that time. So they're relying on the rational ignorance of the public to continue to push the narrative that they're pushing. So they did this very much so with Russiagate, for instance. Paul Manafort, when he was indicted, they pushed the narrative that Manafort was indicted over ties to Trump-Russia collusion, when that was not true at all. The minutia of the story is very clear. He was indicted over his dealings with the Podesta group, with Tony Podesta, the Clinton campaign chair's brother. It was activity in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe that he did with the DNC's favorite lobbying group long before he went to work for Donald Trump. Long before. And by the way, a lot of the public was never told this story, so they didn't know. Manafort was brought on for a very small role in the Trump campaign. There was clearly an attempt to steal delegates that he had won in the Republican primary at the convention. And he wasn't, some nobody on the campaign, was an expert in a delegate fight on the floor of a convention. There were only two people alive at that point who had been involved in a real, slap, whatever the phrase is, drug out delegate fight on the floor of the convention. And one of them was Paul Manafort. He was hired because of that, to protect Trump's right flank at the convention if need be. And by the way, there absolutely was an attempt to take the delegates from it in states where there were, backdoor rules where you can generally ignore the will of the voter. Yeah, that's kind of the way to put it. You could ignore the will of the voter and suggest to them that we know better. So we're going to, I know he won, and I know it's winner take all, and I know it's the whatever. We're going to kind of allocate these delegates as we see fit. And because Manafort had been involved in one decades before, he was literally the only one with experience on how to do it. And the only one that Trump would be able to hire. The other one wouldn't have worked for Donald Trump, even if he asked him. So he was hired in this very limited scope. And when it did come out, because it did, and I'll tell you right now, I remember a conversation in DC at one of my favorite little bar and food joints, which is on the outskirts of Columbia Heights, basically. It's, the area of DC where you'll never find people from like Politico, but you will find people I did happen to find a certain editor at the Wall Street Journal who was all over this and filled my ear with Manafort's ties. And it was basically almost immediately when Trump had found out about all of this, the guy was gone. Yet the media used people's ignorance to the backstory, the behind the scenes, to push the narrative that Manafort was indicted because of his ties to Russia, and it was Trump-Russia collusion, and that was, of course, a total lie. Even the sharing of polling data story, which went down in flames, had nothing to do with Donald Trump. Everything dated back, and most of it was tax evasion, stuff like that, and embezzlement or laundering, one or the other. It was all dating back to his time working with Tony Podesta and the Podesta Group in Eastern Europe. And by the way, what was the deal there? The Podesta Group and Manafort essentially lobbied on behalf of Hillary Clinton's State Department for those interests. That was their role. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump. Nothing. It was quite the opposite. It was everything you thought you knew about Trump, if you believe collusion. Everything you were told was supposed to be surrounding Donald Trump. Swap it out with Hillary Clinton. That's what it was. And she was the Secretary of State, which is even worse. This is lobbying a sitting secretary. And it worked, by the way. It worked. Many of those efforts did work. And Manafort's job overall was to help the image of the West in Eastern Europe and help the image of the country like Ukraine in the United States. And that's where some of this polling conversation got into. I mean, that's what he was doing. Anyway. Yeah, so that's the first part of that statement. Look at the second one. That was a really good question, Orange Out. That was a good question. I don't know, but I'd like to know. I really would. The second part: planted evidence, fabricated evidence connecting Trump to Russia, and they take issue with that, by the way, too. They're really focusing in on planting, but the fact of the matter is, they did plant evidence. They didn't plant it on the server. They planted it at the FBI. They planted it at the State Department. They planted it in the media. And it wasn't real evidence. It was, in fact, fabricated. Fabricated in the sense that, like Durham points out in the filing, it's almost like, Bill, you can't read or something. It's in the filing. They intentionally gave bits and pieces of information to fabricate a story and omitted others that gave total context. And much of what was in the dossier later, of course, was fabricated. Golden showers, fabricated. Attempts to, these secret ties to get the hotel up, fabricated. Do you know how, what I should say is, this is how you should know that all of that was bogus and should have knew from the beginning. Results. The same way you know whether polls are bogus or not. Results. The bottom line is Donald Trump clearly doesn't have very good ties in Russia at all. His attempts to build a hotel in Moscow failed. And in a country like Russia, if you think you're going to put up some extravagant hotel in Moscow somewhere to cater to the elites and to cater to the diplomatic crowd and the oligarch crowd, you better have connections. Otherwise, you're not getting anywhere. Donald Trump got nowhere in Russia. It did not happen, though there were attempts made. There's nothing wrong with trying to build a hotel in Russia. The very concept of talking to a Russian was criminalized under Donald Trump. Now it's normalized again. Speaking of Natasha Bertrand, back then the appearance, or I would say, a picture, a photo, or a phone call was somehow evidence of impropriety. As if it's not nuts to expect two superpowers, nuclear superpowers, not to talk, excuse me. That's crazy. The last time that happened, it led to a little something called the Cuban Missile Crisis. I thought we learned that lesson. Apparently not. Content of the conversation Michael Flynn had, there was with Sergei Kislyak, there was absolutely nothing wrong or improper about the conversation whatsoever. But because of this narrative that the mere fact that there was a conversation makes you somehow a criminal, Michael Flynn didn't know how to handle it. And he made the wrong decisions. The right answer was simply, yes, I spoke to him about that. Screw you. I'm the incoming national security advisor. Take a hike. There's nothing wrong with it. Instead, he did. He bugged a little bit. And he made an even worse mistake, which was the foolish mistake of thinking that the FBI is the good guys. Are the good guys. Or any of them are, for that matter. As a former DNI, he clearly had some reverence for the men and women who put on the uniform, and the men and women who put on their suit and go to the bureau every day to try to do their job. That was a mistake. And definitely lying to the president of the United States is a mistake. So, in Maryland and Delaware, I see you guys asking me about that. I'm going to tell you right off the bat. Wanted to focus on Minnesota and North Carolina today. We can make some brief discussions about it, but the fact is, Maryland, states like Maryland and Delaware were not going to come out good for the Republicans. Now, look, if you are a Republican, play everywhere. Democrats, when they are in the middle of a good year, there is no race that they will not play for. They'll play in Alabama. Oh, yeah. They'll play in Pennsylvania in what was a solidly R seat under Rick Saccone before the map shifted. They'll play there. Oh, yeah. And Connor Lamb will eke it out. Oh, yeah. They'll play in Georgia 5, 6, 7. Oh, yeah. So there's nowhere, under Tom Price, that district was R21. He left, became Health and Human Services Secretary, and Handel won it by 5. But they played for it, and they spent ungodly amounts of money in it, trying to redefine the Democratic image, and by the way, redefine the Republican image. They were absolutely successful, and even though they lost that particular race in that district, what happened? 2 years later, they won it. So they'll play anywhere. So I'm not trying to discourage anyone. I'm just simply saying there's been a lot of bad news for Republicans, and I would be a whiner if I didn't focus. I don't want to be Dave Wasserman here, okay? You have to look at the good and the bad. And the fact of the matter is, there has been some good developments for Republicans. And, I'm not them. I like to tell both sides of the story. Let me read another question. There is a great question, by the way, about amnesty. William, I don't know how you like to be addressed. I'm getting to that question. That's a fantastic question. And I'm reading some others here. Laura's popping them on me. Let me just take a look. And in Maryland, I actually do think, looking at New Jersey, for instance, there are similar states like that. New Jersey, kind of like the old middle colonies, right? Maryland's a little bit different, of course. But, Delaware, there is a congressional district in Delaware. If there was this huge swing, but things have changed now. Maryland, I would say, is a little bit different. Probably a little bit more hope there. And Dan Bongino, though, I will say this, Sue, he's too partisan for it. I'm just being real. I'm not. I like Dan. I respect his, his service to the country and all the things he's done in law enforcement. But he is absolutely now firmly in whether it's right or wrong. And I think it is wrong. Dan Bongino's views 20 years ago are mainstream. 10 years ago are mainstream views. They are. The dichotomy has changed. And now, the media has done a good job at marginalizing people. So I'm not sure how much Dan Bongino would play in a state like Maryland and like second. I think he's in the 2nd congressional district. Am I correct about that? Somebody may have to give me, someone may have to give me a refresher on that. Yeah, we're going to take a look at North Carolina after the little thing here. Yeah, so let me just sum this up and we can get into Minnesota. All right, but the fact is, PolitiFact is a fake fact check. I want to read something. I'm going to drop it in your box, and then we'll take a look at the actual maps in the voter file. Let me put it in this comment section. All right, and if those of you want to read along, you can do so. Let's put it in this one. Let's see if I'm going to do it with the Twitter source link. I don't know if they got a paywall or something. And I'll put it in locals. Put it in Rumble and then YouTube. Or I think it might have done it backwards there, but it's going in Rumble right now. All right. So there's the link about basically Democrats crying about what happened in Minnesota. And there's reason for them to cry. All right. So Minnesota has basically turned out to be I don't want to say it's bad. It is what it is. Like I said, they had attempted to draw Minnesota in a way where the last county in the Iron Range that's Democrat kind of dilutes some of the Northwestern vote. And of course, what's their justification for that? Their justification is, of course, population, right? And I got to bring up my spatial thing here. Hold on one second. I brought up the wrong one. This was all ready to go. I screwed it up. Let me look at the map, Geo Library, and let me bring up the map in Minnesota. All right. Well, that's not quite where I'm supposed to. Why won't the rooftop view come up? Come on, rooftop view. Come on. Yeah, it's killing me here. I'll restart it and see if it works, but basically it moved it in that article. You'll see. So it moved it a little bit more to the west. Here, I'll bring the image up so I can show people. I'll use theirs for right now. That's just what we're going to have to do, and I'll share it. 1 second. I don't know why, but my rooftop view showing where Republicans and Democrats are. Minnesota is, of course, inferred, but you know how accurate we've been on the inference models. So this is theirs right now. I'm about to pop it up. All right. There we go. And let's get rid of me so you can see it better. All right. So you can see what they did here. And you have by, let's go by county again on my end here. I'm going to try to get this for you to show you by county where it's at. I don't know if it's going to work out, but we'll see. What you're basically seeing is the northeastern part of Minnesota moved really hard to Donald Trump in 2020. And as we discussed, at least 2 of the 4 counties, most northeast, were going to go to Donald Trump in the Iron Range. All right. And in the end, what we thought would happen generally happened, with the exception of a little bit weaker of a performance in, here we go. There. Oh, my goodness. Ads. Cook County was a lot, that's a Democratic area, but it was a lot weaker for Donald Trump than some of the polling suggested. Joe Biden won 66-32. That's all the way in the eastern side. Lake County, right next to it, was almost damn near even. Joe Biden carried it by less than 200 votes, 180 votes. St. Louis, however, we thought may tighten a little bit more, and Joe Biden carried it 57-41. Those are the 2 most northeast, 3, excuse me, most northeast. Carlton, I'm going to watch what I say here, but Joe Biden did not do as well as Hillary Clinton in some of those areas. Ithaca, if I'm saying that correctly, Donald Trump took. Coochin, Donald Trump took. Everything west of those 4 counties, Donald Trump took, except for Clay, which is all the way on the western side. So what you clearly see here is what I would argue an attempt, because you have a concentrated population in St. Louis, which is where they basically have that number. And what are you saying, Laura? Try to make it bigger? Okay. I'll zoom in. How's that? Let's keep going. There we go. That's about as big as I can get. Where you see that number 8 to the right of that is St. Louis. To the left of it, both those counties, you have Ithaca, which is just south of Kuching, and those went to Donald Trump. But again, where the 8 is, that's Ithaca. To the left. To the right is Lake. And Lake is basically the last bastion of big numbers for Democrats in the Iron Range. What do I mean by big? About a 17,000 net vote advantage, okay? The rest of it to the west is all Trump. It's all Republican. Even 7, where you see that Congressional District 7, where the actual 7 is, to the west of that, almost a square county that has its left side edged in a little bit, that's Clay. And that's the only Democratic county in western Minnesota. So what do you see here in 2022 compared to 2012? 2012, they stopped right up when you got to Becker and all those other counties. They had stopped. This time, they carved right into Becker, and they butted and tried to get right up against Clay. Their attempt to put that red on the left side is just to show you the entire congressional district, even though Clay is blue. But they moved all the way through northern Becker. What they're trying to do is dilute the vote in Becker, dilute the vote in other counties, like Mahoman, if I'm saying that right. Donald Trump carried that. Hubbard, Clearwater, all of that. That's all red. And that's fine. Whatever. You'll notice that the 2nd congressional district here looks like it's looks like that, there's some serious, I guess what I'm saying is they're trying to say it's competitive, but there is more serious issues in the 2nd congressional district than they even try to make it out. So let's give it some background. The 2nd congressional district definitely is the most competitive, if you look at the results of 2020. And it saw the most significant changes because it went away from Goodhue and Wabasha, which Democrats have slipped in, and gained LaSure County in the southeastern metro area. But Angie Craig represents it. All right. There is no okay, how could I put this? In Minnesota, there's no national Democratic Party. They don't consider themselves to be Democratic National Committee members. They have their own thing going. It's part of their history going back to the original progressive era. The Democratic Party was too corporatist to them. Other issues with labor, even race, by the way, they wanted no part of emerging Dixiecrats. It goes back to their history. They wanted to be separated from the National Democratic Party. So while they are Democrats and they do get help from the National Democratic Party, they are technically not. I know it's stupid, but so when you see them, but on Tuesday, DFL Representative Angie Craig announced a re-election facing a rematch against GOP challenger Tyler Kistner. In this environment, I think it's safe to say old Angie's done. All right. Why? She even laments herself. While I am, of course, disappointed that the new boundaries do not include all of the cities and towns that I currently represent in Congress, I look forward to being the voice of several new communities across Minnesota. All right. Craig lost Goodhue bigly. Remember that word? 14 points. Wabasha, 24 points. LaSure, which was previously included in the 1st district, went for Hagedorn. God rest his soul, rest in peace. He just passed away. Went for Hagedorn by 21 points in 2020. So the bottom line is here, Craig is a little bit of a sacrificial lamb to shore up the 8th. And in good years, she could probably hold on. But I don't think about this time. All right. And I think some of this is fair to say. Of the state's 8 congressional districts, rural, less populated districts in greater Minnesota had to expand their geographic boundaries, while more urban and suburban districts with more people had to shrink in size. You know what? I think that's actually a fair assessment. But it does. Look, if you've been to Minnesota, the northwest area of Minnesota, where they included parts of the 8th congressional district, just don't represent the rest, the northeastern part of the 8th congressional district. They don't. Population is not the end-all be-all when it comes to redistricting. This is an intentional misnomer that's being pushed. Geography is not just about geography. It's about culture. And people intentionally point out geography because they're trying to keep different groups who believe different things and who have different ways of life. They're trying to keep representation, or at least that was the original design. They're trying to keep representation for them. To argue that population is the end all be all is deeply honest for two reasons. One, it simply is not, as is outlined in the vast majority of most state constitutions. Actually, all of them. Not one of them solely gives credence to population. Secondly, the census, A, does not, it's like really 2A and 2B. The census, 2A, which is the problem in North Carolina, is not always accurate. And every year, every census year, every 10 years, there's always someone who says they were overcounted, undercounted, whatever it may be. That's the issue in North Carolina we're going to talk about coming back from the break. And 2B is that the census, up until 50 years ago, no longer asks about legal status. They just count all residents. So urban illegal residents are diluting the vote of suburban and rural America. They're diluting the influence. They're diluting the representation, which, by the way, is not more about electoral politics. They're diluting funds. So legal residents are paying taxes, and yet illegal ones are disproportionately hurting the return they get on their investment. Another thing that the so-called conservative Supreme Court punted on. The 5 districts centered in the 11-county metropolitan area grew at a higher rate than the statewide average. That's true, but they did not grow that much when we were looking at vote totals, by the way. It's simply not an area with incredible population growth. It's not. Not legal. It added that it could draw entirely a new that it couldn't draw entirely new congressional districts, but change existing boundaries in a politically neutral way. Bull. To ensure that they meet constitutional demands of equal representation. Does it look equal to you when you look at northern Minnesota? Does that look like equal representation to you? No, it doesn't. Because if you live in, say, Ottertail, if you live in Becker, Monoman, Clearwater, Hubbard, Cass, Beltrami, which Trump flipped, that was a Democratic stronghold. Trump took it. Lake of Woods, another one. Couchiching, another one. Pennington, Marshall. You know, if you live in any of those, you feel like, A, you've been flat out put into a district with people who don't represent you or even that you share nothing in common with. Or B, your in-kind brethren, so to speak, whatever else I could call them, your Norwegian brothers, right, have been moved into a district that no longer represents them, and your say has been diluted. So don't give me this crap. However, Angie, I think it's safe to say, is in deep, deep trouble. I don't know how she holds on in this district at this point. I mean, she better hope for, I mean, really what you're looking at is, look at the district where it's cut off, goes down further to the right. Obviously, you have counties like, Olmsted, Wabasha, Goodhue. That's what hurt her last time. That's where, some of her vote doesn't go. But she also now, looking at it, Scott is still there. That's a Republican county. Beneath Scott, LeSueur, Rice. Trump crushed it in LeSueur, ladies and gentlemen. He got 65% of the vote in LeSueur. He flipped Rice. He got Rice. Goodhue went for him by 14 points, as it did generally for the Democrat. He killed it in Wabasha. He won it by 30 points. So it's going to be close. And in a year like this, I'm not sure that she can rely on the Democratic suburbs outside of Dakota to carry her, because Trump, he only lost them by about 14 points. And that was it was supposed to be a relatively neutral year. He only lost them by 14 points. Is that going to be enough to buffer some 30-point losers? LeSueur and is that enough? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. With 12-point, 13-point leads, Rice is going to go from a bare Republican flip
to potentially 10 points, 11, 12 points, 13. Who knows? Who knows? We don't know yet. We don't have enough deep district polling. But Rice will not be R+1. So but it will be a seat. When time comes, Democrats will be able to say, that it's competitive again. If it was 2018, it would be very competitive for Democrats. Yet I hear some of them bitching. Which brings us to the point in North Carolina, but we're going to take a quick break before talking about North Carolina, all right? Which they're complaining about. It's unbelievable. And I'm going to give you the inside story on that totally. All right, don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after short commercial. Laura's yelling at me for using the B word. We'll be back after the short commercial. Listen again, if you're watching on YouTube, very appreciated. Hit the like button. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we go live, but very much encouraging everybody to move over to Rumble. All right. Chat over there. Give us pluses, Rumble pluses over there. The Rumbles, they're just called Rumbles. It's a plus sign. And of course, definitely subscribe. And when you're on there, you'll see the link to Locals right over there. Join the Locals community. peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. Join us on Getter too. Big audience on Getter recently. All right. Getter, we love you. We love you guys over there. Big audience. All right. Something tells me switching to the noon hour was the right move. All right. So if you don't follow me on Getter, at People's Pundit on Getter, kind of like Twitter without the underscore. People's_Pundit on Twitter, but on Getter, there's no poser that Twitter won't remove. It's just at People's Pundit on Getter. All right. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Stick around. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. More to come.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
And we're back to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. There you are. I put you in, Laura. People can hear you. Woohoo! So, here we go to North Carolina, Laura. Okay. where the map, I want to tell the backstory first. And it worked out good. Don's going to be a little bit late, which is going to work out good. Here's the map, and I'm going to hat tip because Laura or Aristotle's not working today. It's pissing me off. Michael Hyland of WNCN. All right. I'm a hat tipping him on this because I grabbed a map that I could show them. So let's show it while I chat. All right. And this is the new one. The Supreme Court told Republican legislature they had to redraw the map, and they kept, first of all, using the phrase the will of the people. There was absolutely no real justification for the ruling in their ruling. There was no math. There was nothing. There was just this garbage phrase they kept referring to, the will of the people, the will of the voters. The will of the voters is expressed in the legislature. It's not expressed by you who think you know better. By the way, we all know you're out anyway, because everyone knows the polls in North Carolina. Everyone knows the internals and public polling that has been conducted. You're getting thumped. And it will be a Republican-controlled Supreme Court. So I don't, this last ditch gasping of dying breath of a Democratic majority had no right to step on the real will of the voter, which came from the legislature, because this, of course, is supposed to be a republic. This is the problem I have with judges and committees, commissions, so-called nonpartisan. It's the biggest lie ever. There is no way in most states to hold these hacks accountable. Definitely no way on these so-called nonpartisan commissions, which are really stuffed with special interest picks. They are. And they answer calls all day from those special interest groups and the lawmakers whom they owe their position to, and they draw the map behind the scenes without giving people real public comment. They don't give a damn about public comment, as you saw in California, where at the last minute, they drew a completely different iteration map that didn't at all resemble the prior million iterations they released past the deadline, because they can't even do their job right. Because it was written by an LGBTQ, RSTUV, WXYNZ special interest group. What the hell they have to say in it, I don't know. If voters don't like the district, guess what? They can vote the person out 10 years from now. I mean, they can vote those people out 2 years from now. And then when the next census comes up, they can have their say in the district, in the redistricting maps. Excuse me, but I favor representation. I favor self-governance. I favor representative government. I don't favor elitism. I don't like it. All of it smells like crap to me. And I'm sick of the whining of people like David Wasserman, who went to Twitter and cried again, sucking his little thumb like a little baby. I didn't hear Dave cry, oh, it's such a close state. I didn't hear Dave cry when Republicans didn't get 35% of the districts in California. The presidential vote doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with it. It only matters to you because it's your gauge that you use to decide which districts are going to be competitive and which aren't. The popular vote of a state has nothing whatsoever to do with redistricting. It's not in any of their constitutions. It doesn't matter. You're only bringing it up because you are a hack who missed 15 House races last cycle with likely leans alone.
Get him.
Forget about toss-ups. Multiple races, likely Democrat, that got swept right out from underneath you. Made you look like a total fool. I am so sick of and by the way, do you think it's an accident that Mark Elias keeps retweeting him? They are completely in league. It's so obvious. He goes out there, pretends to be an analyst. He's not. He pretends to be. Forget about pretending to be an objective one. And every damn tweet Mark Elias jumps on that he has to work with in the courts. Don't you find that at all remotely suspicious? We're on to you, bro. You're not fooling anybody. Just go work for him. Just go work for him.
Get him, baby.
They make enough on election law. That's what they do. Stop pretending to be an analyst for some website with a garbage predictive model. By the way, how's Florida treating you? How are those calls in Florida working out for you? Same people over and over again. Repeat hack offenders. They're not capable of objectivity. And I told everybody this when redistricting started. Nothing will show how partisan these so-called nonpartisan gurus really are than redistricting. You think election forecasting shows how partisan they are? You think polling analysis shows how partisan they are? Wait until redistricting. I didn't hear him crying and whining when they split Portland in 4. I didn't hear them crying and whining when they used Albuquerque to dilute the rural vote in New Mexico. And on and on and on and on and on. How about mind your own business? He knew nothing about the inner machinations of California, nothing about what happened in that process, as he clearly knows nothing about what happened in this state right here, North Carolina. For those who have not yet heard the story, let me again repeat myself. And the reason why Democrats, I'm going to add a new bit to this, why Democrats really did not fight it. It was more than just a political maneuvering that they lost. Governor Roy Cooper, who runs as a supposed moderate and dupes the voters now twice, is not a moderate and again played politics and rolled the dice with the state budget and let it go beyond the deadline, which he did now for the second time in a row because he was trying to pack the budget with Medicaid expansion. Senate Democrats were on board with his plan for months. The generic ballot soured. They started reading the internal polling on the court races, and they started to completely lose their spine. He felt the pressure from his own party, who bailed on him, and he had no choice but to fold. Republicans knew they had him by the short and curlies, and they put redistricting in with the deal. The original map that was released and the Supreme Court had no business striking down, yet did, was an agreed upon map. And you'll notice to the right here, look at Pitt County in eastern North Carolina. You will see it is cut in half. The citizens of Pitt County are furious. They don't want to be represented by the northern, central, whatever you want to call it, bluer areas of North Carolina. That is a very clear intention, but they had no choice but to do it, honestly, because, and everyone in North Carolina accepts this. This is not some statement I'm coming up out of, I'm making up out of whole cloth. Lawmakers on the right and the left, even Cooper himself acknowledged such when he made his pitch with his economic development plan to bring broadband and to bring high speed to the rural areas of North Carolina. Everybody accepts that eastern North Carolina was undercounted by the census. Pitt, Craven, Carteret, undercounted. Republican areas suffered the most. And that was part of the mindset when they negotiated the original map. And here he is whining that it's still a 9-to-5 map. Quite clear gerrymander. Still quite a gerrymander. It's 9-5 for 2020 Trump. If you look at it in 2020. If you look at it in 18, it's still a competitive map.
But they don't want to hear that, though. They want it completely
because
unbalanced in their favor.
They want it unbalanced. They want it to be able to erase, Laura, a 10 or 12-point swing. That's what they want. They're trying to use redistricting to avoid what is a very normal, very typical swing during a first-term incumbent midterm. They can't do it with policy. They can't do it with polls. They can't do it with the president.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to do it with courts and fake nonpartisan commissions.
And import
They-
voters.
And importation of voters. They already did skew it by doing that because we didn't ask about citizenship. So their stressing of population alone is already skewed, is an attempt to maximize that what they already got that favors them skewing it. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? They did it. They prevented asking citizenship on the census, which when you do, does absolutely count when it comes to redistricting. That's why, and it had for the vast majority of our damn republic, the history of our republic, it did matter. It was only 50 years ago when they stopped asking, Laura.
I wonder why.
I wonder why. 40, really. And that's about why. Because that's the time that Ted Kennedy generally convinced, the mainstream of the Democratic Party to start using immigration to change the nature of the electorate, to change the country.
Well, because they know they have no policy, like you said. So therefore, they have nothing to run on unless they import their voters. And that's end of story. Because in a real election with no importation of immigration, they would lose every.
They'd still be losing 48 out of 50 states. They'd still be. Let's be real.
I'm just calling it how it is. This is the truth.
In a good Republican year, they'd still be losing massive landslides. Massive landslides, they would. Between that and indoctrination, academia.
Yeah, that too. Of course,
you got to add that.
Yes.
Yeah, because
that's why if we took back the school systems though, and start from the very low, like local areas.
If there was an equilibrium,
forget it.
Forget it. But you know what you're saying actually underscores my point, because they can't play. Democrats today can't play under equilibrium.
That's right.
They can't do it. They hate John Nash. Are you kidding me? They can't play under equilibrium. They just can't. They don't want an even game. They want it, and I always equate it, or I always use the metaphor of like a game of 9-ball. They want you to spot them the 6. And if you don't spot them the 6, they pack up their cue like little babies and they go home. That's what they do. Or worse, now because they have the courts and the commissions and all these other agencies at their disposal to help them rig whatever system that they're trying to rig, it's worse than that. If you don't spot them the 6, they run to the owner of the billiard and get him to close down the billiard. Or they ban you from the billiards. Yes, right. That's really, nowadays, it's, 20 years ago, they would cry and take their ball and go home. Nowadays, it's worse. You get banned from the billiards. Or, they like break your pool cue and tell you got to play with that pool cue now. Yeah, sure. We can, you don't have to spot me the 6, but here, give me your cue. Snap! You got to play with the little side. That's what they do. That is an accurate.
That's an accurate analogy.
It is an analogy. It is absolutely an accurate analogy. And this is what this crybaby is talking about. This is what he's doing. There's a good chance that ours would win Fayetteville, Wilmington in the 7th, and that's the 7th congressional district. Am I showing it to you? I am, right? That's the 7th congressional district, which was Biden 0.4 for another 10 Republican seat to 4D map in 2022. Having a hard time believing the North Carolina Supreme Court would accept this. Right after he tweets that, Mark Elias quote tweets him and says, "This is just another failing effort by the GOP to illegally gerrymander North Carolina. I am very certain it will not be the adopted map." Yeah, you're very certain because the hack Democrats on the Supreme Court are what? Your friends? We have deadlines here. This is supposed to be a country of law and order. Amen. Because Mark Elias is a crybaby doesn't change that. And it's very clear that Dave is literally giving him things to use to argue in his brief. Do you understand this? They will use now Dave Wasserman's fake ass analysis to pretend like that's legitimate, and they will put it to a court. They will use it in their filings. I'm not kidding. It is very clear Dave Wasserman is just like working for Mark Elias. It's been going on for months. Does he not think people notice this?
I have a great
And then just
question
cut.
that's prevalent for here.
It's very much like Sullivan tweeting about the bank story with Russia ties to the Russian bank, and then Hillary Clinton quote tweeting him. Definitive proof after
3
getting
minutes later.
Slate. After getting Slate, right, after leaking it to Slate without any, confirmation whatsoever, and then they run it, or Salon, whatever it was. This is the same damn thing here, Laura.
Mm-hmm. It's sad.
This is a fair map. It's actually less than fair.
It is less than fair.
Because Democrats would win districts during like a 2018 cycle. They would win districts that they would not win in a neutral election year. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So really, we should be looking at it from a standpoint of a neutral election year. But instead, Dave is looking at it as I know that Democrats are going to have a bad year, so I'm going to try to
balance.
he's jerrying. He is jerrying. We got Don.
Real
I
quick
wanna
though,
bring in
Derek
Don's-
wants to know the stronghold of the Democratic power in North Carolina. Is that Durham and Chapel Hill area?
Yes, the triangle. The triangle, generally speaking,
Show
which
them the
includes,
triangle.
Yeah, well, I can't because it's not Aristotle.
Oh, it's not doing.
No,
that's right.
it's not
Sorry.
Aristotle. I wish I could. But generally speaking, Pitt County is getting absolutely screwed. You have the Halifax area, and then there are really the north. It's not northeast because the northeast all the way to like Dare and Currituck and Tyrell. That's all Trump country. There's like Pesquetank, I think is how you say it. That was even. Joe Biden technically carried it, but only with the absentee ballot votes that came in 3 days later. He was carrying it. Anyway, Washington is where it starts, and Bertie. Washington and Bertie, right before Halifax, to the east of Halifax, is where their stronghold starts, outside of the Mecklenburg area, which is the southwestern part, which is which you guys know, your very typical Democratic stronghold. You do have Wake in there and some counties in central North Carolina, Chatham, Wake. Donald Trump didn't even do that bad in Chatham. He won 44% of the vote. That's actually better than most Republicans in recent years. But in Wake, he kept it at 36. And the typical is that you will lose North Carolina if you fall below. It's really like 33, but if you fall below 35% in Wake, you'll lose North Carolina if you're a Republican. Donald Trump exceeded that. So, it was obvious. It would have been very hard for Democrats to undo that, even squeezing out any more votes in Cumberland. Donald Trump did well in Cumberland and got 41% of the vote. Like when Republicans were really getting killed in places like Cumberland and Hokie, they were in the 30s. In Hokie, Donald Trump won 44. So, I mean, it was like Anson, he won 48% of the vote in Anson. That's right to the east of Mecklenburg. Actually, it's right after Union, which Donald Trump carried overwhelmingly. It's like you have to hop, skip Union. But that's their central power. And you can see that they basically put the Republican vote in Pitt. Pitt went for Joe Biden, but the Republican vote is reversed. So they took the Republican vote in Pitt and chopped the North off. And now Republicans in Northern Pitt are like, what the hell? Because it's actually, if you look at it on a county map by presidential, it's reversed, if you understand what I'm saying. So in any event, here we have this map. This is clearly a competitive map. There will be one, obviously, they're going to take a lot of Republican votes in one because they're going all the way out. As far as Perquamens and Chowan, if you're a Republican living in there, you're pissed. Because they went all the way to Pasquotank, which is their Biden carried. But again, in this election, it's going to go R10, that county, that part of the county in one. So what Wasserman is worried about, Laura, is that his vote, and I say his because he's a freaking Democrat. Let's cut the crap. His vote in Halifax and the surrounding areas, which Donald Trump managed to tighten in many areas, like Vance. I mean, in Warren, he got killed, but in Vance and in Wilson, he almost carried Wilson. These are areas Democrats relied on for votes in 2018. And in 2020, it just didn't look that great for them. They managed to eke out some more, which is why it got closer. But, Biden obviously still came up pretty short. The bottom line is Now, this is not good for them because they're worried that some of these areas are going to go from like he mentioned, he brought up something that is Biden 0.4, Fayetteville, Wilmington in the 7 totally, by the way, is Biden 0.4. That is going to swing. So he's mad. He's mad that his vote is going to be diluted by the suburban swing. They
That's
were
what it is.
stoked about the suburban swing in 2018.
Not
Stoked
today.
about it. The suburban vote is a swing vote. You just have to freaking deal with it. One will go easily to a Democrat in a good Democratic year. Come on, man. I'm so sick of this guy. I'm sick of all of them. Come on, man. Let me bring in my good friend Don Smith. We're going to answer some questions here. Don, how's it going, buddy? We got to get this out of here because that's blocking your face. Let me see if that
don't
works.
touch. I did it.
Yeah, but you know what, Laura? That's still
No,
going to
just
block us. I'm
delete
going to
me.
make you guys
It's
sick
all right.
over here.
Delete
But
me.
let's just, yeah, I guess I could. Don, let's go side to side here for a hot minute. First of all, as always, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm late.
Yeah, I'm just tired of this crap, bro.
Yep.
You know, this is a competitive map. And first of all, again, the map was part of the deal because Roy Cooper rolled the dice and lost. I mean, I don't know if he just doesn't know because he's an idiot. Maybe he does because he pretends to know more than he does. And I'm talking about like the inner workings, the inner politics of states and these areas. He doesn't appear to have good sources at all. California's as blue as it is. That's his home team right there. All right. Yet he had no freaking clue about the redistricting process in California. No clue. And had the cojones to pretend like that was not run by special interest or something. And that was a nonpartisan or bipartisan effort. That's ridiculous. And here we have in North Carolina, the most transparent process in the history of redistricting in North Carolina. And it was agreed upon by both parties in the state. And yet this national crook, Mark Elias, he's obviously working with this retweet thing with him, with Dave Wasserman and Mark Elias, been going on for months. And he's using that analysis to argue in front of courts as if like Dave Wasserman is some objective person or something. He is not, you know? And this to me is, I'm over it. I'm at the end of my rope where I just got to call it out. This map is better for Democrats than the first one. Yes, it's more than a fair map. More than a fair. He is pissed. And Mark Elias is pissed. Because the suburban vote's going to swing against them and they could lose one. District 1. That when the heart of their power, like that prior question asked, is in district, much of it is in District 1. They have a couple power centers in North Carolina, but they're going to lose that one area. I am sick of this crap because they're also worried about, I believe it's the 7th. Let me just go and peek. No, it is. Well, hell yeah, I guess it is. Well, they can worry all they want. I don't know what to say. Suburbs swing, Don. They swing. I mean, that's what happens. They are the swing vote, brother. They are the swing vote. You know, they got Cumberland. They got their district where Cumberland just completely erases Bladen. You know, I mean, get over it. It's like these people don't know how to lose with grace. They don't like to play fair, and they sure as hell don't know how to lose it. They don't want a fair playing field. They don't want a level playing field. That's the bottom line. They don't want it level. Like I said, you play pool, they need you to spot them to 6, or else they run to the owner and get you banned from the billiards. I'm sick of it.
Yep.
Sick of it.
But the reality is we shouldn't be surprised by this. I mean, this is
we shouldn't. It's just annoying.
It is. It's very annoying, but it's what they do. It's what they do. There's also the other side of it too, and that's the side of the Republicans, the strong leadership. Where is it? Stand up and push back against this stuff. It's
in North Carolina, they're fighting, you know.
Yeah, but it's no different than the voter ID laws, right? I mean, people they're just letting all this information float around out there without countering it. Stand up, be strong, show some conviction, right? I mean, show some conviction and just point out what's going on here. But as I always say, when Republicans do it, it's gerrymandering. When the Democrats do it, it's just redistricting, right? They're just doing the right thing, and they're always doing the right thing. And but that's the narrative, and it's always going to be that way as long as our media is the way it is, and our Republican leadership is the way they are.
That's why it's got to take people like us to push back. Like, this is not objective at all. Don,
Right.
you know where I come down on most issues. And you know, because you know me personally, I can't stand the Republican Party. I hate when people keep like showing my poll and they put like an R next to it. Like I'm a Republican poll or something. I hate the Republican Party. I will say this openly and outwardly right now. I don't like parties, either party, frankly. But you know where I come down on most issues. I still try to do my damnedest in my analysis. The viewers, the readers, you owe it to them to at least try to call a spade a spade. You know what I'm saying? And that just doesn't happen anymore in my industry. It doesn't. Everyone's in their respective camps and they bend over backwards to show their you-know-whats.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yep. Lather, rinse, repeat.
Lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat. Yeah, man. So you were, and it's all gravy being late because you were doing a pre-tape. So I do want to ask you before we get into questions, what do you got coming up on Saturday? And then what do you got coming up next Saturday? Because CPAC, you'll be going to CPAC again. You had a big CPAC last time. Folks, if you're not watching Don's show during CPAC, if you're, a follower of CPAC or you're interested in the candidates and you want to learn more about them, nobody does it better, prods it out of them than Don. What do you got going on? Because you had a big one last time. What do you got going on? What were you doing today, if you don't mind? What do you have going on tomorrow? Plus, what's in the lineup next week? What are you going to be up to?
Going to be a lot of stuff next week. But just before I came on here, I was a little bit late. Sorry to everybody. I was interviewing Peter Schweizer. So we're talking about his book, Red-Handed. Amazing stuff in that book. Peter's done a lot of great work. He's one of those guys that brings the receipts, right? He does the investigative work and he gives you the facts and the details. But this book, I think he took it to another level. So we had an opportunity to talk about the connections with the Biden family and the Chinese Communist government, the big business people that are part of that government as well. And just really fascinating stuff. And it's a great book, Red-Handed. If you haven't checked it out, I don't use the term must read too often, but this one is one of those must read books. So I had Peter Schweizer. Tomorrow, we've also got Pat King, who was, as we're speaking right now, just got arrested here. In fact, while I was doing the interview with Peter Schweizer, he's the organizer of the Freedom Convoy, the truckers convoy up in Canada. That's right. So we've got him
arrested.
Yep. So we've got him on the program, just pre-taped that a couple days ago. So pretty interesting timing on that and everything that's going on. Of course, Peter Hussey will be there and my good friend, Richard, the People's Pundit Barris. So yeah, we've got a great lineup for tomorrow, but next week is going to be amazing. We've already got some really cool stuff lined up for CPAC. And we haven't even really started yet. So we will have a great CPAC. You definitely want to be following me on Locals. So donsmithshow.locals.com. During the shows that we do there, you'll see snippets of the interviews. You'll see, a good portion of them. But to get the whole interviews, you want to be following me on Locals. So donsmithshow.locals.com. And we're looking forward to a great CPAC. Great lineup of speakers there, and we have access to all of them. So so shoot us an email too, or shoot us a comment if you want, if there's somebody specifically you'd like to hear from, because we just love interviewing everybody.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it just got all clustered up this time, cluster, but I was going to go to CPAC. And then, because I always like to, any excuse I have to see you and Brenda anyway, would have been nice. Laura and I could have joined you. But, I got my speech at Hillsdale next week, and it was just logistically too much. You would think it would be easy, but it wasn't, especially when you have a 2-year-old, and somebody I thought, that I could go to CPAC for, basically wasn't going to go. So it was like, I had... And plus, when somebody, asks you to do a speech, I was thinking, well, I'll go to Orlando and then I'll drive to Naples. But you owe them your 100%. And it's like, are you going to be 100% or are you going to be 50%? And if what's the difference between the speech you'll deliver if you do that versus if you fly into an airport that's 30 minutes away from the hotel and take an Uber, so, it's
Laura and I wish we could have came, but you brought up Peter Schweitzer, which I really have been dying to get your take on this before we hit questions. You brought up Peter Schweitzer. I don't use the term must read either, but this is by far his best book, I think. And he's done some doozies. I got like 2 of them. This is a good one, guys. And it really does lay out a whole bunch of stuff, connections that'll help you make sense of this like crazy madness that we are living in. Let's talk Liz Cheney. Okay. Today, Meghan McCain said that she doesn't think it's right for Donald Trump or any leader to endorse the primary opponent of one of our own because are we a big tent or not? Stupid. One of the most illogical, elitist things I've ever seen posted on Twitter, because of course, what she's saying is you have to protect the establishment. You can't, she's calling for a Big Ten, yet pushing out new blood. It makes no sense whatsoever, Meghan. Secondly, you're a hypocrite because Liz Cheney, while she was serving as the House Conference Chair for Republicans, made a sizable contribution to the primary opponent of one, Thomas Massey, who, unlike Liz Cheney, is actually a conservative. But you get into the Peter Schweitzer stuff and you start to realize how deep these really go. Liz Cheney and other people, their opposition to Donald Trump has absolutely nothing to do with principles or morality. In the case of Liz Cheney, we all know that Donald Trump slammed her lying father for lying to the country to get us to invade Iraq. So that's one issue. Just like he mocked and criticized Meghan McCain's daddy. So this is a bunch of like petty family nonsense. With Liz, it goes even further. Liz Cheney's husband, all right, is a partner at Latham & Watkins. They just so happen to have a bunch of CCP clients who are Donald Trump's arch nemesis, arch enemies, the CCP. That just so happens to be the case. And plus, they have clients that are connected to Spygate. So they always push this crap, as morality, Don. Yet, if you read Peter Schweitzer's book, you'll find out real quick that it's really that Liz Cheney is knee deep in you know what when it comes down to this crap. What do you make of that, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then there's so much stuff in that book that I think people just don't understand that this stuff happens all the time, right? And that's just a great example of it.
Perfectly normal corruption. Sorry.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yep.
No. Yeah. And that's exactly what you find out there, especially with what you're just detailing there about Liz Cheney. But, just the irony, too, of her calling, like you said, about the big tent party. Aren't we a big tent party? No, does she not even remember her own father? I mean, this is the guy who hated the Tea Party. He did everything he could to crush the Tea Party. He was fully on board with the leftists on that. So the hypocrisy. But this is the thing about Peter Schweitzer and the tie-in to the Liz Cheney, but really everything else that Peter has done. It's always, and I mentioned this to him in the interview. We actually touch on this. It's always a follow the money thing. It's not because of the mean tweets. It's not because of this. It's not because of that. It's always a follow the money situation. And that certainly that is no different. But we even talk about that in the interview about that thought process and about how it always comes back. And it's the realization of everything is that just follow the money.
Yeah, Don, this is a good, question to start with. Somebody said a funny one to end the day on, but I think I want to bring this up, because you're talking about all these it's not just big tech, it's elements of our government. I mean, these people have essentially sold us to the CCP. They definitely sold themselves, and they sold our rights to the CCP because when they get that phone call, boy, they answer, don't they? Right. So somebody asked, who do you think, Don, had the biggest fall, as far as these agencies, these, 3-letter agencies, the CDC, the FBI, CIA? Who do you think had the biggest fall from grace?
Yeah, that's a great question. They all have, right? So I mean, it's a question now of who's done it worst, right? I guess I would have to go really with the FBI, But I would put, maybe this would surprise some people, I would put the IRS right behind them, nipping at
Oh
their
yeah, I didn't
heels.
even bring that up.
And I mean,
Yeah.
you go back to Lois Lerner and all the things that happened there. You go back to the $85 billion that they want to put into the IRS to beef it up, right? And we talked about this last week about the politicization of these organizations. So I would have to go with the FBI, but I'm going to put the IRS a very close second.
Yeah, I'm also going to throw the CDC in there. I can't wait for the next
Yeah.
poll because we are going to do our trust in indicators, and it's been about a year since we first asked. Trust in institutions. I mean, indicators. And the CDC, according to Gallup, was like, what was it, like a 60-point swing or something? It was they blew on with COVID. They completely blew their credibility with the American public. Independents and Republicans completely reversed their opinion of the CDC. Democrats, of course, are still, believe, but Democrats are deferent to power now. I mean, it always were, but I mean, they're as far as like, being skeptical of powerful agencies, that's gone now, brother. They used to be the ones who were skeptical of the FBI, CIA. Now they're totally in bed with them. It's really all there is to it, But yeah, I mean, it's an amazing transformation over 2 decades.
Yep. But it's really, it's at the time. You always gotta add that it's at the moment. What they're saying right now fully fits their narrative, so they support it. I mean, tomorrow they go one word off script and forget it. They're canceled, right? So I mean, that's the society we're living in right now.
This is another great question. I was waiting for you to answer it. Somebody had answered it. I had asked it right as soon as I opened it live chat on Locals, and I said, "Wow, that's a good question." Let me bring it to the show. So we had talked earlier this week about, and we talked on your show about this as well. And then I got this graphic, talked about it with you, talked about it with Bannon, talked about it with Steve Gruber. It's an incredible swing. And it's like Hispanics, we see them swinging everywhere else. We see them swinging in certain states nationally. What we didn't see was certain areas of California. Then the recall happened. Larry Elder killed it in the Central Valley. Majority Hispanic counties went for Larry Elder, voted yes to recall Gavin Newsom, when all of the traditional Republican areas in Southern California did not. Right. So then we put up this, we talked about, look at the swing in the vote, Hispanics, Mexicans specifically, which are the majority in this district. Democrats just thought Adam Gray was going to cruise to election here. The Republican establishment is reduced to recruiting spoilers to try to stop David Giglio. They're afraid. And the question here is the way they're acting raises this question perfectly, because Republicans talk one way but act the other. And he says, do you believe that the post-2012 GOP autopsy was all about getting the base to accept amnesty rather than truly attempting to win the Hispanic vote? Because it seems like the GOP doesn't care about winning the Hispanic vote anymore now that they have shown it's America first, pro-working class policies that are attracting them, not America last policies like amnesty and Wall Street cronyism. What a fantastic question. What do you think?
Well, yeah, and I actually, I agree with that. I think it was more about accepting amnesty, accepting the complete reform of the of our immigration policies and all those things. I mean, if you look at the Chamber of Commerce, right? I mean, they fully support amnesty. They always have. They always will. They support hiring illegal migrants to work in your facility. Cheap labor. They're about cheap labor. So I do. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Number one, and I agree with that. Yeah, I think that was the premise of the post 2012 autopsy.
And I just add, Don, they absolutely have always hated their own base. Like the Republican establishment, they've always hated their own base. So it's like, why wouldn't they hate Hispanic working class too? It's like it really goes hand in hand. I mean, if they're not going to like the white working class, why on earth would they respect the Hispanic working class anymore? I mean, it just doesn't, right? I mean, because one's new to the party, the other one's been there, their target for a while.
What it really proves is nothing is about race. If it's a racial
Yeah.
issue, it actually has nothing to do with race. If
That's right, Don.
it's a feminist issue, it has nothing to do with women. I mean, look what's
That's
going
right,
on with
Don.
the Penn State swimmer and all that kind of stuff. So you and I know that, and we've talked about that a number of times. Nothing is really what it appears, and that's what made that a great question, was to see through everything to what
Yeah.
the real goal was there.
Because isn't this what they always wanted, Don? You know, and
Mhm.
it's like maybe they would have been a little bit more accepting, Will, if and hope, you know, can I call you Will? Maybe they'd be a little bit more accepting, Will, if it was like their policies that attracted them, because then they
Right.
continue with the farce, like Don saying that it's really racial and it's not. Maybe they would have been, but not because, you know, of the reasons that they would have stated.
Right.
It's because because it was the America First working class agenda. It's now exposing it again as an us versus them thing.
Mhm.
It's an establishment versus the average, the coastal versus the middle, right? They they can't stand that.
Right.
So yeah, that was
Well,
just a fantastic question.
One real quick example.
Go ahead.
Look
Yeah,
at the
definitely.
look at the southern border under Joe Biden. Ever since Joe Biden got in, he's down there. He might as well be personally ushering these people across the border, right? Can't get them in here fast enough. The second something happened in Cuba, and they were going to come, the Hispanics were going to come from Cuba. The Cubans were going to come to Americans because they know how the Cubans vote. What happened?
Yep.
You had
Shut
Mayorkas.
it down.
You're not going to step foot in the United States yet. Go to the southern border. You're totally cool. So it's all about politics. It has nothing to do with the Hispanic people. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's all about how you think.
And the nerve of the Biden administration touting how much immigration fell last month in January, only 125,000 came. January only, number one, is ridiculous. That's an enormous number. Number two, January is supposed to be the slow time. And in fact, we have seen low 5-digit numbers in January, almost nil. So to claim 125,000 is an improve in the month of January is absolutely ridiculous. A lie, a bald-faced lie. It is the slow month, and that is an extraordinarily high number for the month of January. So I just wanted to say that too. Don, we've had experience against the squad, and sadly, the Republican establishment destroyed once in a lifetime golden chance to take one of them out last time. Because you know they came in with these guys have done a really good job so far, but in order to get you over the finish line, you're gonna need us, right? That was a load of crap. Really, they just mined the guy until they got rich off of it.
Yeah.
But here's somebody's asking about what we think about Ilhan Omar's challenger. She's an Army vet. She's Muslim and conservative. I did talk about this in a prior show last week. What do you think? What's your take on it? Because you ran a race up until the primary, up until we won the primary. And then we had a plan, post-primary plan to go after Rashida Tlaib. And there was a fracture, just to I'll give people the backstory. There was a fracture with the Democratic base. Brenda Jones was the representative from that district. She kind of slept during a primary, and the Black community didn't realize she was in danger. Ilhan Omar came out with her Rashida Tlaib came out of nowhere with her activists and defeated her. She wanted Pelosi's backing. Pelosi abandoned her. The Black community was furious. Don and I's plan was to reach out. It was a moderate Republican candidate. We found a lot of common ground to reach out to Brenda Jones and get her to help us do something extraordinary, which is basically pull the Black Democratic vote in Detroit out from underneath her. And and then, by the way, you'll always have a door to knock on. They had no representation under her. The Republican Party came in, saw it as a fundraising opportunity because of how much the party hates Rashida Tlaib, and they destroyed everything and wrecked everything when we had some chance to do something real there. What do you think, Don? I mean, outside, because my feeling is barring something like a plan we had, which was like real grassroots, real face-to-face relationship building. Outside of that, I don't think anybody has a prayer based on their character status. You know what I mean? I just don't. D plus 30 is D plus 30, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And really what I see in this race is I see a redo of exactly what you were just detailing there.
Yep.
I think it's going to be a total redo on that. And Rich is right. This is something that people have to understand. Some of these state Republican parties, it's for them, that's all it is. It's just a fundraising opportunity.
Scam.
They deemed right up front that this guy had no chance, the candidate running against Rashida Tlaib, but it was a great opportunity to raise money for them. And that's what they did. They left the candidate behind. Of course, we didn't go on past the primary because of that, because the state took that over. What we had put together there, it could have worked. It could have really worked. It was a legitimate shot at getting people over the line, so to speak, and be willing to vote differently than they normally would have in the past. So I see this in Minnesota with Omar. I think it's the same thing. There's also that element of the media, right? Because they're afraid to go after Ilhan Omar, just like they were afraid to go after Rashida Tlaib. The media was really bad in that one against Tlaib. Some of the articles they wrote, some of the things that they pushed was just way over the line. Just, you want to talk about misinformation. Some of the stuff that was put out there was just incredible. So I see a redo of that, unfortunately. But it's also the Republicans. I would say this to any candidate out there. You don't necessarily have to have the state. The state party does not have to be in your corner, because sometimes they're not really in your corner.
They're not. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you the betrayals that Don and I deal with on a daily basis. On a daily basis. They will actively work to elect a Democrat behind your back because you're not their guy. And by their guy, I don't mean Republican or Democrat. I mean in the club. In the club. They would rather have a Democrat represent the district than they'll throw it away because they can't control you. You know, if Don and Rich get you elected, they can't control you. Right. So they will throw that seat away on purpose. It's sad, man. Look at what happened to Joe Miller. I mean, that was amazing. And that was all Karl Rove, by the way. All Karl Rove. Let's see. Okay. That's Laura saying. So question. We're all sick of seeing Clinton, Obama, Biden, Comey, Brennan, McCabe, etc. blatantly commit crimes and get away with it. What is it going to take to restore accountability to DC?
Yeah, that's a great question. If anybody's got the answer, please let me know, because I'd like to know that as well. Yeah, it's really frustrating. Let's face it, if it wasn't for the blue dress, if it wasn't for the actual DNA, to this day, we would all still be getting lectured about accusing Bill Clinton of having an affair with Monica Lewinsky and blah, 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 blah. So, I don't know. I mean, it took actual DNA evidence. That's the only thing that they've ever faced really anything for anything over. So, I guess I'm with you. I guess Wrecking Ball sounds good.
Yeah, I really do think, for those of us who knew, Trump couldn't do it in his first. He had a lot of big plans in his second, the ATF, FBI, these agencies were fighting for their existence at this point, because he really did get it, after a while. It just was too damn late, unfortunately. I did that one. We put the one in North Carolina up. So when you say you wonder if Minnesota 2 is in play, Minnesota 2, I thought you were going to talk about the governor's race. Yes, Minnesota 2 is in play. Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. So they're complaining about maps like Minnesota 2, maps like North Carolina 1. They're complaining about this because what happened is that they know the suburbs are going to swing against them. Angie will not be able to count on the suburbs of the Twin Cities voting for her by 25, 30 points this time. It's not going to happen. And some of those counties barely went Democratic in both cases. So if you were talking about Biden carried that county by less than half a percentage point because of the suburbs, they're going to swing to R plus 10, R plus 15. It's going to be a bloodbath. Minnesota 2 is in play. Absolutely. And Olmsted may even swing back, and that's outside of that district, but there are some areas. And by the way, Hagedorn's district is safe. He's not going to lose that district. Speaking because I brought that county up, but how much does redistricting matter if there's a big red wave? A lot. It matters a lot. There's no doubt about it. Like in New Mexico, there was a district Republicans could have won in a big red wave. I mean, that pumpkin moved. Hold on. It moved 17 points in 2020 away from Democrats. And by all expectations anyway, the third could absolutely continue to move. For instance, in New Jersey, Tom Malinowski held on by only 1.2%. Well, he's safe now. I mean, so yeah, it matters. You have one district basically in New Jersey that's competitive now, when 2 districts Democrats were set to lose. Oh, they were gone, man. Especially after we saw what happened in 2021 in New Jersey. They were gone. What else? I mean, we can keep going. I think Wisconsin, they shored up some areas in Wisconsin, but I still do think Wisconsin 3 is in play. Abigail Spanberger in Virginia was finished. Now it's Biden almost 10-point district. So she could theoretically hold on by the skin, chin of the skin. What is that? The chinny chin chin, man, whatever. She could barely hold on. The hair on her chinny chin chin. And I'm going to say something else, right? But it does matter. It matters a lot.
Yeah.
That's why when it comes to North Carolina, they better hold the line. The Minnesota map is approved. It's done. Kansas, what was the other one? Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky they really could have ran the gambit in Kentucky. And I think they blew it. Another one, is Florida, where Don is right now. They better listen to their governor. Florida is not by any means a blue state anymore. And if you think it was bad in 2020, wait until you see the margins Republicans are going to win in this election. Don, you remember, I mean, Floridians to the core, man. Florida was a razor-thin state every year. It's clearly not anymore. Donald Trump carried it comfortably. Over 3 points is a comfortable win in the state of Florida. He'd probably carry it by 5 or more now. I'm serious. If it was today, he'd carry it by more than that. And there really isn't even 3 Democratic strongholds in Florida anymore. There's 2. Alachua County and Broward. That's it. The rest of the surrounding area in Palm Beach, that shifted toward Trump. Miami-Dade shifted toward Trump. So Ron DeSantis' map may be the starting point of a negotiation, but it's closer to reality than I think most of us think. And come 2022, you're going to see it. So they better just now hold the line. Well, otherwise, they'll be waiting a year from now, folks. They'll be looking back a year from now and looking at the results and saying, damn, we have to wait 9 years before we can make this an accurate map. I mean, that's why DeSantis is as aggressive as he is, because he's seeing and I'm not talking about 50,000 net swing. In South Florida, Donald Trump earned more than 200,000 extra votes from South Florida than he did in 2016. That's an enormous amount of votes. In the Space Coast, he erased any Democrat competitiveness. Erased it. It's gone. I told you NASA loved him. I told you all. Nobody listened to me. They loved him. And he killed it over there where they all live. So what do you think, Don? How much does it matter? Matters a lot, in my opinion. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally matters a lot. But I also want to, when you talk about Florida, let me just kind of bring this up because I mentioned this earlier. Why do you think they were so strong against refugees coming from Cuba? Where do you think they were going to go? They were going to Florida. So yeah, Florida is really strong right now. Everything is in play. The redistricting absolutely matters. That's why they're doing it. Both sides. That's why I make the point about the one side it's gerrymandering, the other side it's redistricting.
That's right.
Everybody's got a goal going into this thing, right? And that's why these governorships are so important, and that's why some of these other races are so important that we don't maybe pay as much attention to going forward. The census is important. All these things are. So everything's in play. Redistricting absolutely matters, and we'll see how it plays out in the few places that it's not fully done yet, but it's certainly going to have an impact.
Yeah, and I do, unfortunately. I know some people are going to be pissed, but I will try to get to some. Maybe I'll be able to do a stream or something on Saturday or Sunday, and before I leave, and I'll try to get to some of these questions. But unfortunately, I do have a hard out because I have to get some work done before I go, and there's just and among other things, alterations were wrong. It's ridiculous. It's just, and now I'm down to the wire. And Laura's yelling at me. I told you a month ago to get this done. She's right, but I'm busy. It's like, how can I hear Brenda laugh? Is that Brenda laughing? There she is.
Don't you mock me. You don't even mock me well, okay? So let's just put it out there. It is your fault, not mine.
It is.
I am not sorry, and you will hear it to kingdom come.
I'm
At-
eating this one. I'm
At
not
least he said
saying
you
I
were
was
right, Laura.
I
At least
Well,
he
did.
I'm
admitted you
always
were right.
right, Don. I'm
I-
always right.
But he doesn't always admit that.
That is true. That is true.
Is that our job as
I
men
will
now? We
concede to
kind of
that.
have to save some dignity. And I'll tell you, there's just no time. It was just, of course, there probably is something I could have bumped, but it's hard, man. It's hard.
No, there
But
was
yeah, so
plenty of
why don't
time, but you just don't know how to schedule yourself.
I'm going for the drive now, aren't I? I'm gonna get in the car. I'm gonna drive
Begrudgingly.
the hour for you. All right, I'm doing it.
Laura
And we
wins.
got yeah, absolutely. And so go ahead and tell people again, run over what you got going on again one more time before we go.
So tomorrow, noon Eastern time, we've got Peter Hussey, latest on national security. Of course, Rich, the People's Pundit, Barris, with the latest
Absolutely.
polling data. We've got Peter Schweizer talking about red-handed. Amazing. You definitely want to check out that interview. And we had a sit down with Pat King, who's the organizer of the Freedom Convoy, who has now been arrested. So I think you'll find that interesting as well.
Yep.
Got into some of the on the ground stuff, what was going on at the time. So really good stuff. Noon Eastern time every Saturday, Don Smith Show and donsmithshow.locals.com. And definitely keep up with us and follow us throughout CPAC. A lot of great stuff going on there. Kash Patel, we've got Andy Biggs, we got too many, Gordon Chang, too many to even mention right now. And we haven't even started booking yet. So definitely check us out there, donsmithshow.locals.com.
And to Tony and James and others who may have mentioned other states, we were definitely, like I said, trying to balance out the coverage here a little bit. So we went with North Carolina and Minnesota. We will hit Texas in some of those primaries, definitely governor races, and the potential for upsets in both gubernatorial elections and then also senatorial elections. We'll get around. We'll make the rounds around the country. We will. All right. But yeah, Don, as always, thanks for joining us, my friend. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll talk to you later, but I'll see you tomorrow on the Don Smith Show at noon, buddy.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
All the best, Don. Give Brenda our best. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Bye, Laura.
Bye, guys. Bye.
All right,
so
guys.
Jay Patel had a great question, though, before you go, because next week,
Okay.
if you see, it says, is the show schedule changing next week with Rich being out of town?
Yeah, it is. We may have to just flatly miss we're going to miss Wednesday, right? That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, so I'm saying, should we give them a show on Tuesday?
Well, I was thinking Monday is not the what are the odds day, so I was thinking Monday. You know what, Jay? Stay tuned to locals for that. I mean, everyone's going to get the notification when we do, but it's either going to be Monday or it could be Tuesday. I'll talk to you more about that, Laura, but I think Monday's even probably better unless something gets in the way, like we have to go drive back out to go get what I got to go get right now because it'll take time. So stay tuned for that, Jay. I would shoot right now for Monday if it was my preference because I like to keep scheduled show days, but that may not be possible. We'll have to see. But yeah, we'll definitely make it up. All right, with that in mind, everybody, I'm gonna go. But before I do, of course, today was merch day. Send us pictures if you're wearing our merch. All right, we'd like to see them, and maybe we'll make that a thing on Friday. Hey, so and so in the merch. All right, it's down below in the link. Laura's putting it up right now. Yeah, I like that idea. Right, share the merch. Share the merch. Show you're in the know. Show you know.
And let us know if we could share your picture.
Yeah, of course, you got to tell us that first. Don't send it. Well, send it to us anyway, but also when you do, let us know that we can share the picture or not. We'd still like to see it though.
Yes.
And then, of course, you can follow me on Getter. If you guys aren't following me on Getter, at People's Pundit, on Twitter, at People's_Pundit. YouTubers, like it. Give us the thumbs up if you like the videos. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. But we would very much appreciate everybody signing up on Rumble. Subscribe to the People's Pundit YouTube channel on Rumble and give us those rumbles on the videos where the plus signs are. And, of course, the best way to support what we're doing here, it's a big year with big plans. We need to build a community to do it. All right. Get exclusive content, access to all of the election stuff that's coming up, early access to polls, embargoed polls, input on polls, you name it. Let's just wrap it all up in exclusive content. Do so in order to bring this to you guys. We need you to do it. So sign up, peoplespundit.locals.com. The button is right there if you're watching on Rumble. If you're not, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, everybody, if I don't see you, have a great weekend. We always appreciate everybody watching the show. Have a great one and a safe one. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. See you soon.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette,